I was born into a devout Muslim family in Central Asia, where faith and tradition shaped every aspect of our lives. From a young age, I was taught to pray 5 times a day, fast during Ramadan, and follow the teachings of Islam with unwavering devotion. My parents raised me to fear Allah and to obey every rule without question. I believed that my prayers and good deeds would one day earn me favor in the afterlife, and I found comfort in the structure of my faith. Life was not always easy, but I did my best to endure. I married young, as was customary in my culture, and together with my husband, we built a life centered around our faith and family. We had children, and I poured my heart into raising them to be good and obedient Muslims. My husband was a hard worker, providing for us as best as he could. Though we had our struggles, I never doubted that Allah had a plan for us. Then tragedy struck. My husband, my provider, my companion, was taken from me suddenly. One moment he was there and the next he was gone. I was left alone, a widow with children depending on me. The pain was unbearable. I had always believed that if I was faithful, if I followed every command, I would be protected. But now I felt abandoned. I prayed harder than ever before, crying out to Allah for strength, for answers, for a sign that I was not alone. But the silence that followed my prayers was deafening. The weight of my grief was heavy, but life did not stop. I had to keep going for my children. Day after day I pushed forward, working tirelessly to provide for them. But the sadness never left me. At night, when the house was quiet, I would sit alone, staring into the darkness, wondering why Allah had allowed such suffering in my life. Had I done something wrong? Was I being punished? These questions filled my mind, but I never voiced them aloud. Doubt was dangerous. I had to remain strong. Then, one evening, my body began to fail me. I felt an overwhelming weakness take over, a deep exhaustion that I could not shake. My head ached, my vision blurred, and my limbs grew heavy. I thought it was just the weight of my sorrow finally catching up with me, but it was more than that. A fever raged through my body, burning hotter with each passing hour. I tried to stand, but my legs would not support me. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum, loud and erratic. Something was wrong. I knew it, but I had no strength to call for help. The last thing I remember was the cold floor against my skin as I collapsed. My breath slowed, my vision darkened, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by darkness. It was not the kind of darkness you experience at night when the lights are off. This was deeper, heavier, like a vast emptiness stretching out endlessly in every direction. I tried to move, but my body felt weightless, as if I was floating in an endless void. I could hear faint whispers, distant and unclear, like voices calling from far away. A strange sense of awareness filled me. I knew I was somewhere, but I did not know where. At first I felt nothing, no pain, no fear, just silence. But then slowly a realization crept over me. Something was wrong. I remembered collapsing, the fever, the weakness overtaking my body. I remembered the sensation of slipping away, like a dream dissolving into nothingness. And now I was here in this strange, empty space. Was I dreaming? Had I fallen into a deep sleep? Or had I died? A sudden chill ran through me as that last thought took hold. Death. Could it be possible? Had my time really come? My heart, or whatever remained of me in this place, pounded with a deep, growing unease. In life, I had feared death. I had prayed to be spared from the torments of the grave, hoping that my faith and obedience would be enough to grant me peace. But now I was here, alone, lost, and confused. Then, out of the darkness, something appeared. A small light in the distance, faint at first but growing brighter with every passing moment. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't the harsh glare of the sun, nor the soft glow of a candle. It was pure, radiant, and alive. I felt an unexplainable pull toward it, as if it was calling me, drawing me in. As I watched, something began to emerge from the light. A shape, a figure. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. My mind struggled to comprehend it. Then, the shape became clearer. It was a branch, stretching toward me from the brilliance of the light. But it wasn't just any branch. It was moving, reaching, alive. And then, before my eyes, it transformed. The wood twisted and shifted, changing its shape until it became something else entirely. A hand. A hand? My breath caught in my throat, though I had no lungs to breathe with. The hand extended toward me, open, waiting. And then a voice spoke. It was unlike any voice I had ever heard before. It was powerful yet gentle, strong yet filled with love. It resonated not just in my ears but deep within my soul, as if it had always been there, waiting for me to hear it. If you grab onto my hand, I will bring you back to life. The words echoed through the void, filling every part of my being. My mind reeled. Who was speaking to me? What was this? Was this Allah? Was this an angel? I had always been taught that in death, one would face judgment, that the deeds of life would be weighed, and that paradise or punishment would be decided. But this was not what I had expected. I hesitated. Fear and doubt warred within me. I had been a Muslim my entire life. I had prayed, I had fasted, I had done everything I was taught to do. And yet, in my moment of death, it was not the familiar voices of my faith that came to me. It was this hand, this voice, this presence that I could not explain. But even as my mind wrestled with the unknown, my heart responded differently. Something deep inside me stirred, something beyond logic or reason. There was a peace in the presence before me, a love so strong, so overwhelming, that it drowned out all my fears. This voice did not condemn me. It did not demand or threaten. It simply called. If you grab onto my hand, I will bring you back to life. The words repeated, and this time, I knew I had to decide. I could turn away, remain in the darkness, and accept whatever fate awaited me. Or I could trust. Tears that I did not know I could cry filled my being. I reached out. Slowly, trembling, uncertain, I stretched toward the hand before me. And the moment I made contact, everything changed. A rush of warmth flooded through me, a power so immense yet so gentle that I felt as if I was being wrapped in pure light. The darkness vanished. The void disappeared. I felt movement, a pulling sensation, as if I was being lifted, drawn upward. The whispers in the distance faded, replaced by something new, life. Then, suddenly, I felt something else. A sensation I never thought I would feel again. Cold, solid, the unmistakable weight of my own body. I gasped as my eyes shot open, and the first thing I saw was the dim light above me. I was alive, and I was in a morgue. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My vision was blurry, the light above me flickering dimly, casting long shadows on the ceiling. The air was cold, so unbearably cold that it stung my skin like ice. A deep chill settled into my bones, and my body felt stiff, as though I had been lying still for far too long. Then it hit me. I was not in my home. I was not in a hospital. I was somewhere else. I tried to move my fingers, but they were stiff, unresponsive. My body felt foreign, as if it no longer belonged to me. Slowly, with great effort, I turned my head to the side. The room was eerily quiet, sterile, and empty. There were metallic cabinets along the walls, and something about the place sent a shiver of unease down my spine. It was then that I noticed what I was lying on, a cold, hard metal table. And that was when I truly understood. I was in a morgue. A wave of panic rushed through me. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as my mind tried to process what had happened. The last thing I remembered was falling unconscious. The darkness, the voice, the hand, and now here I was. Had I really been dead? How long had I been lying here? I tried to sit up, but my body was weak, my muscles refusing to cooperate. My limbs trembled as I forced myself to move. It took every ounce of strength I had, but finally I managed to lift my hand. The simple act of seeing my fingers move brought a rush of relief and terror all at once. I was alive. But how? A distant sound broke the silence, the soft shuffle of footsteps in the corridor outside. I heard muffled voices, the quiet chatter of medical staff going about their duties. I had to let them know I was here, that I wasn't dead. But my throat was dry, my voice barely more than a whisper. I took a deep breath, summoning all the strength I had left, and forced out a sound. A weak, hoarse cry escaped my lips. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The footsteps outside stopped abruptly. There was a pause, silence, thick and heavy. Then, hurried movements. I heard the rustling of fabric, the clicking of shoes against the tiled floor, the sound of a door creaking open, and then a scream. The first person to see me was a young nurse. She stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale with shock. The tray in her hands slipped from her grasp, clattering loudly to the floor, sending instruments scattering in every direction. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Another voice, deeper and more authoritative, called from outside. "What's going on?" The nurse didn't answer. She just turned and ran. Seconds later, a doctor rushed in, followed by another nurse. Their eyes widened in disbelief as they saw me moving, struggling to sit up. One of them hesitated before stepping closer, cautiously reaching out to check my pulse. His fingers trembled as they touched my wrist. His expression shifted from confusion to sheer astonishment. This is impossible," he whispered. Another doctor joined him, his face lined with disbelief. She was dead. 2 days. We signed the papers. I could barely understand what they were saying. My mind was still reeling, trying to comprehend my own existence. But 2 days? Had I truly been gone for that long? I wanted to speak, to tell them what had happened, but my throat was too dry. My body was weak. All I could do was lie there as the medical staff scrambled in confusion, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. One of them kept checking my vitals over and over again, as if he couldn't believe what the monitors were showing. Then came the whispers. "She was dead, but now she's alive." "This isn't possible. This is a miracle." The word hung in the air, miracle. Even in my dazed state, I knew they were right. There was no logical explanation for what had happened to me. Science had no answer for the fact that a woman declared dead for 2 days was now awake, breathing, moving. But I knew the truth. I remembered the hand, the voice, the light, the overwhelming peace that had surrounded me in that place beyond death. I knew, without a doubt, that it was no accident that I was here, alive. Jesus had brought me back. I didn't understand why. I didn't know what it meant. But one thing was clear. My life would never be the same again. The days that followed were a blur of confusion, fear, and overwhelming questions. The hospital staff monitored me closely, running every test they could think of. They checked my heart, my brain activity, my organs, everything. Yet, no matter how much they examined me, they found no medical explanation for what had happened. I had been pronounced dead, with no heartbeat, no brain function, nothing. And yet, here I was, alive, talking, breathing. News of my return spread quickly. Some doctors whispered among themselves, calling it an anomaly, an error, something they could not explain. Others avoided me entirely, as if they were afraid. And then there were those who looked at me with something else in their eyes. Not fear, not doubt, but reverence. As if they knew, deep down, that something beyond human understanding had taken place. But no one had more questions than I did. I had spent my entire life devoted to Islam. I had prayed, fasted, followed the teachings of my faith with every breath I took. And yet, in the moment of death, when I should have encountered what I had always believed in, paradise, judgment, or at least the presence of Allah, I had encountered something else entirely. That voice, that light, that hand. Who was it? I tried to push the thoughts away at first. It was too dangerous to question. My entire life, I had been taught that asking too many questions about faith could lead to doubt, and doubt was a dangerous thing. But no matter how hard I tried to bury it, the memory of what had happened refused to leave me. The voice had been full of authority, yet so gentle. It had offered me a choice, not demanded my obedience. And the love I had felt in that presence, it was unlike anything I had ever known. I needed answers. After I was released from the hospital, I returned home to my children. They were overjoyed to see me alive, but I could see the fear in their eyes as well. My eldest daughter pulled me aside and whispered, "Mama, people are talking. Some say this is a sign from Allah. Others say it is something else." Something else. I nodded, unable to respond. I didn't know what to say. Days turned into weeks, and the questions in my heart only grew stronger. I could no longer ignore them. I had to know the truth. And so, against everything I had ever been taught, I did something I never imagined I would do. I reached out to a Christian woman in our village. I had seen her before, though I had never spoken to her. She was known as a quiet woman, kind but different. There were whispers about her, warnings not to associate with her because she followed a foreign faith. Christianity was dangerous in my country, and those who followed Jesus often suffered greatly for it. But I had no one else to turn to. I approached her cautiously one day while she was at the marketplace. My heart pounded as I walked up to her, my hands trembling. If anyone saw me speaking to her, there could be consequences. But I didn't care. She looked at me with warm, kind eyes, as if she had been expecting me. "Sabina," she said softly, calling my name with such gentleness that it startled me. "How do you know my name?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled. "I heard about what happened to you. I have been praying for you." Something about her words sent a shiver down my spine. I took a deep breath and spoke quickly before fear could stop me. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Something I cannot ask anyone else." She nodded. "Come, let's talk." We sat in a quiet corner away from listening ears. I hesitated, then finally I told her everything. I described the darkness, the light, the hand that had reached out to me, and the voice that had spoken. As I spoke, tears filled my eyes. I didn't even know why I was crying. Maybe it was the relief of finally sharing it with someone. Maybe it was the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Then she took a deep breath and said the words that would change my life forever. "Sabina, the hand that saved you belongs to Jesus." Her words sent a shock through me. I stiffened, my heart racing. "No," I said quickly. "That's not possible. Jesus is just a prophet." She shook her head gently. "He is more than a prophet. He is the Son of God. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And Sabina, he is the one who brought you back." I wanted to argue, to deny it. But deep in my heart, I knew she was right. I had known it from the moment I had woken up. It was his voice I had heard. It was his hand that had pulled me from the darkness. And if that was true, if Jesus was truly the one who had saved me, then everything I had ever believed was suddenly in question. I stared at the woman, unable to speak. Tears streamed down my face as the truth settled over me like a wave. The God I had spent my entire life seeking had revealed himself to me in the moment of my death. And he was not the God I had expected. He was Jesus. That day, my life changed forever. I didn't have all the answers, and I knew the path ahead would not be easy. But one thing was clear. I could no longer deny what had happened. Jesus had given me life, not just physical life, but something deeper. A new beginning, and I needed to know him.